So today we are talking about the driver, the big stick. We're talking about setup, and I'm going to show you the 3 most common faults that I see plaguing golfers who struggle with the driver. So thank you for once again joining me here at the Forest of Arden. The hole behind me is the 13th here on the Arden course, where we are talking about the driver, specifically the setup, the starting position. And as I said there in the intro, I'm going to give you the 3 most common faults that I see which give golfers issues when using this golf club. So in today's video, you're going to learn about the tilts that you need to have in your setup. You're going to learn about ball position, and you're going to learn about alignment. Now, just before we get into those 3 topics, if you're new here, you're not a subscriber, there is a link down in the description box below, and there's also one at the end of the video as well. If you click that before you leave, that means that you won't miss any of the upcoming content, and it is absolutely free to be that subscriber. So the driver, it's a really important club for most golfers. You know, if we can get that first tee shot away in the fairway with good distance, it generally makes the game a lot easier, and I'm sure that many of you will have experienced your best rounds when this club works very well for you. So the first thing we're going to talk about is ball position, because that kind of links into the other things that we're going to talk about. So when I take my starting position to this golf ball here, you'll notice that I have that ball positioned just inside of my lead heel. Now, the ball position with the driver is pretty different to the rest of the clubs because we are teeing that ball up. This is not a golf club that you're going to hit from the ground. Years ago, we used to see maybe a lot of the really good players hitting driver from the ground, but modern day technology with the head so big now, we generally don't see them hit from the ground. They're always teed up, and that changes how we have to deliver the club to the ball. So I want you to think of ball position in 2 ways, or 2 reference points. Number 1 is relative to your feet. So you can see how I've got that ball, let's say, just inside that lead heel. That would be a good guide for most golfers. What I tend to see is the golf ball getting too much towards the center, and the center of the body moving too much towards the golf ball. So what do I mean by that? Well, if I take my normal address position, what you'll notice is, yes, the ball is up in my stance, but notice how the buttons or the zip on my top in this instance is significantly behind the ball. That's the relationship I'm trying to create, because that allows me to deliver the golf club with an upward hit, which is absolutely vital for me to use that driver efficiently. So what we see quite commonly is the ball can often get too much towards the middle of the stance. So you can see that's not quite as forward. And often we can see the zip or the buttons on that golfer's top getting too much in line with the golf ball. So this position here would be a golf ball which is too central. Yes, it's too central in my stance, but more importantly, it's too central to my upper body. So if I took my setup like this, I'm probably going to find it really difficult to make an upward hit. Therefore, the options on left really is a downward hit. Or to achieve that upward hit, I might start to do other things in my golf swing, lean back, tilt back, shift the weight back to try and create that upward hit. So the starting position I created there in that fault promoted a downward hit. So I either go with that or I try and fix it by adding something in my golf swing. Neither is a particularly good option. So the most common fault I see in terms of the ball position is a golfer which is too far back in the stance and too much in line with the buttons or the zip on your top. So let's make sure that, yes, the golf ball is further up in the stance, as you can see there, but that's absolutely no good if I then move my body this way and get that buttons in line with the ball. So ball position has to be forward in the stance and also forward of the zip or the buttons on your shirt. If we can start in this position, you're going to have a great chance of creating that upward hit, which is absolutely key when using this driver. So common fault number 2 is actually closely linked to number 1. If you've got number 1 right, you're hopefully going to get number 2 right, and it's tilts. So tilts would be kind of how we position our body in kind of this fashion here. So what are we looking for? Well, we're looking for, when I set myself up with my driver, for my lead hips, that's my left hip, to be a tiny bit higher than my trail hip. And I'm looking for my lead shoulder to be a little bit higher than my trail shoulder. What that does, it puts a very, very small amount of tilt away from the target with my upper body. Now, as that ball is further forward in the stance, the body tilts, along with that, create this setup which promotes this upward hit and this delivery with the driver that we want for maximum distance. All too often what happens is that as that ball gets further forward in the stance, this movement tends to happen here. Now, whilst we can't measure my hip tilts, there's a very good chance here that my trail hip is going to be higher than my lead hip, and there's a very good chance that my trail shoulder is going to be level, or certainly not lower than my lead shoulder. So we have a trail hand which is lower, but we have a trail shoulder which isn't lower, and a trail hip which is higher. So there's a real kind of mismatch there, and these golfers really find it difficult to coordinate their movements going back. They find it difficult to wind their body up in the correct fashion. They find it difficult to load into that trail side, and certainly with the shorter irons we can get away with that because we generally want a steeper approach, and if we don't load into that trail side we don't really get as many negatives as we do with the driver. What we're looking to do with the driver is, yes, create this nice starting position, but load into that trail side, get the upper body working to a position where it's behind the golf ball, and that's much harder to do with those incorrect tilts. So a great little exercise you can do is, once you've positioned your feet around that ball, just hold a golf club across your hips and just ensure that lead hip is a tiny bit higher. And then when your trail hand goes onto the golf club, ensure that it does that with the trail shoulder going a little lower. So now you can see I've got my trail shoulder lower, you can see that angle I've got on my upper body, and my lead hip is slightly higher than my trail hip. I'm now in a position where as I rotate, it feels fairly natural to work into that trail side, build that pressure, and then from there I can start to transfer into that lead side, but maintain that upward hip, which is really key with the driver. And fault number 3 is alignment. And again, this is actually quite closely linked to number 1 and number 2. And what you're going to see following this video is all these 3 things actually kind of quite closely knit together. And if you can get one, you almost get the others as a bonus. So alignment, that's pretty important because it's going to control how we deliver the golf club to the ball. So let's say I'm looking to hit this ball pretty straight down this 13th fairway. And let's say my ball flight is fairly neutral. I want to aim pretty much down the middle of the golf course. Now, when we talk about aim, we have lots of body parts that we'd like to aim. So, for example, what we'd be looking for? Well, if my toe line was parallel to my target line, which we'd say was fairly neutral aim, I also want that reflected in my knees, my hips, my forearms, my shoulders, my eyes. And everything should run parallel to that. So in my view, there's almost 2 types of alignments. There's the golfer who just misaligns their body completely. So as you can see there, I'm aiming far too much up the right, and we can do that same thing up the left. So we get poor alignment. And then, which is actually more common, is the golfer who gets just very, 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 very out of sync, where things don't really agree with each other. So you can see my toe line is at the right, my shoulder line is at the left, my hips might well be somewhere in between and about neutral. But these golfers kind of often find it difficult to assess their alignment because very often what they'll do is they'll use their feet as the guide, and they'll almost look and say, well, my feet are aiming up the right, but the shoulders are to the left. Now, the shoulders are going to have a huge or a lot more influence over what that golf club does relative to the feet. So if we're looking at alignment and what influences the golf swing, upper body is far more important, but it's really important that we get everything kind of lined up correctly. Now, it's important to note here that when we're talking of alignment, we're not telling you where to aim. If I've got a 20-yard slice, I would need to aim into that left rough. So we're not always suggesting you need to aim in the middle, but once you've picked your target, whether that be left rough or flag or fairway, you need to be pretty good at aligning towards that. So really simple, you're going to take your starting position and position your feet and make sure those are parallel to your target line. Then you're going to take the golf club across your shoulders and make sure that that is also parallel to your target line. And also my eyes, so we don't want to have any head tilts this way which would skew my eyes to the right, or head tilts this way which would skew my eyes to the left. So if I can set myself up with good alignment, good tilts and good ball position, I've effectively created what we're going to class as a neutral starting position. Doesn't mean you can hit the fairway, doesn't mean you can hit that ball further than you normally do, but it gives us the best chance. It gives us a nice neutral start so that other things in there are more likely to happen. I'm sure you've heard this before, but lots of things that we see in the golf swing as faults, we can link those back to how that golfer set themselves up to the golf ball. So if we can set up more neutrally, we can start to encourage some good things to happen in the golf swing, and then we're in a much better position to actually hit some shots into the fairway and give ourselves a better chance of creating a good score. So let's go ahead and hit this one down this 13th, and we're going to try and tick all those things off. So there's my ball position nicely up in the stance. Make sure the buttons or the zip is behind the golf ball. I've got good tilts. My alignment is good, which is something I do need to kind of continually work on. So, set up the driver, pretty important. Let's make sure we're checking we're not falling into those bad habits that we see quite commonly. If you can tidy up the setup, it will leave you in a better place to hit some better drives, some more fairways, and ultimately achieve that goal that we're all trying to achieve, lower scores and more fun. Thanks for watching. Usual stuff is down below, comments box, like button, and over here is that clickable link to allow you to be a free subscriber. I would love to have you part of my channel and we can help you play some better golf this year. Thanks for watching.